Thank you, Bob. If nothing else, it shows that I can stick around longer maybe than I need to at 41 years. I want to start out with three little quickie things here. When you were talking about Harvest Hope, I don't know whether you read in the paper, but for the last 3 years, every summer, the zoo conducts a program called Two Can Tuesdays for Harvest Hope Food Bank. And if you bring two cans of food, you get in the zoo free. And this summer, and this just came as I was walking up here, we collected 6,348 pounds, 3 tons of food for Harvest Hope at the zoo. The other thing I want to tell you, I was pulling to park, and this is true, I was pulling out there to park, and I remembered where to park and pull in backwards, so it's still all up in the head about Rotary. And I get this email out of the clear blue sky from the U.S. Department of Justice, from an Assistant U.S. Attorney from Bill Nettles, who most of you probably know. I don't know if you remember, there was an article in the paper last week about these 2 guys at a plantation down in Jasper County that were killing hawks and eagles. Well, they settled that case, and we received in the mail, as I was driving here, a $25,000 check from the judge that he found those guys. So you don't get those every day. I guess that, no, I won't say it. And then the third thing is going back to 1986 and talking, I am having a senior moment. Somebody help me with the name of the hotel where we used to meet on Assembly Street. Carolina Inn. I was becoming the president of Rotary, and I was terrified. Not of public speaking, not of any of that, but I can't sing. And the only thing, and some of you in here know this story, so I'm about to tell it. So back then, there was no piano, and the president led off with the national anthem. And I was sweating, and I walked up there, and all these people were looking at me, and I got to that point, and I said, we're going to sing the national anthem. Well, I start singing, and nobody says a word. And then people started laughing. Do any of you remember that? I was singing America the Beautiful. So my Rotary moment was right there. We have a lot going on at the zoo, and as I look out here, I'm gonna make a statement. I am not, with maybe one exception, going to point out anybody who's been involved in the zoo, because I look around this room, practically everybody here from Jimmy Derrick to Perry Shuping has had a major role to play in the zoo's success. So for all of you out there, you know who you are, and thank you very much for all that you've done. What I'm going to do is tell you here in a little bit about what's going on at the zoo. If you haven't been by there lately and seen the big construction fence and all the heavy equipment moving around, you might not be aware of what we've got going on. So, Mark, if you'll go ahead and get started, I think we can make sense out of all this. We are currently spending approximately $36 million out at the zoo to make major improvements in how we handle our guests, in new exhibits, and some logistical things as well, and I want to walk you through those. But before we do, I just want to take a minute to go over just some literally random facts and figures about the zoo. We are consistently named one of the top zoos in the United States, and Yahoo or one of those just recently did a poll. We were named the 17th best zoo in the world, and I don't know what that means, but it sounds great, and we'll put it on press release. But we have averaged just over 1 million people a year in each of the last 5 years. So 5 million people have visited Riverbanks in the last 5 years. That is an astounding number of people in a community of approximately 700,000 people. It's almost unprecedented. We are also now the largest zoo in the Southeast. In fact, you would have to go to the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. to the north, and I don't know where to the Mississippi. We're bigger than anything. So only the Bronx Zoo, the Philadelphia Zoo, and the National Zoo in the east are bigger than Riverbanks. We're operating the zoo now on a $13 million budget. We are 72% self-supporting, which I'm more proud of than anything. We have over 30,000 household memberships throughout the United States. We even have some international members. And this last one I throw in here just to introduce the next couple of slides, but this year we will do over $5.5 million in food and retail sales at the zoo. That is a number that surprises a lot of people. That's a lot of Pepsis and rubber snakes, let me tell you. And we have a great partner working with us now. It's basically a family-owned company out of Denver, Colorado called Service Systems Associates. They've only been our partner now for about a year, and that $5.5 million is about $700,000 more than our previous operator made last year. So they have really stepped up to the plate. And this has nothing to do with what I'm about to talk about in a moment, but I thought I'd show you. They funded a $1 million renovation of the zoo's main restaurant, which used to be called the Kenya Cafe. We've rebranded it as Tuskers. It's a gorgeous restaurant, and you can't see it, but I'm sorry my pointer won't go both ways, but there are giraffes out here, 4 of them. You can now sit. There's a deck over the lagoon and watch the giraffes. It's an incredible experience, and we are very grateful to them for that. This is our attendance over the last 10 or so years, and we do not have 14. 14 was 1,052,000 people, another record. And I like to point this out because a lot of people don't appreciate it, but our attendance really started jumping significantly in 08 and 09 from roughly 800 to 850,000 up to 1 million. What happened in those 2 years? Staycation. The recession. People stayed home. And what we think happened, since the attendance, you would have thought if that was in fact the reason, and we do believe it is, that it would have we'd have had a bell-shaped curve and it would have started to drop off. In fact, it's continued to climb. What we think happened, about 40% of our attendance, by the way, 40% of those 1 million people come from 50 miles or further to visit the zoo. 90% of those 400,000 people are at the zoo to be at the zoo. In other words, they're not here visiting an aunt or an uncle or a brother-in-law. They are coming into Columbia to come to the zoo. Where we think we picked up, so that's at one end of the scale. The other end of the scale are the Richland and Lexington County residents. Where we picked up were those other folks, say from Newberry, Sumter, Orangeburg, and those areas who have not been to the zoo in a while, who came back as a result of the staycation, realized how much the zoo had changed and how much the zoo had grown, and now are continuing to make repeat visits to the zoo. We see that happening all the time. 100,000, around 100 to 120,000 of those million people came to the zoo from Charlotte. In fact, if you eliminate Richland and Lexington counties, the Charlotte and Mecklenburg area is the largest metropolitan area we draw folks from every year. We are the largest attraction in the state, and if any of my colleagues in the room have numbers down here that you say are wrong, talk to your PR people. They gave us a number. So that's Ripley's Aquarium. In case you can't read it, down at Myrtle Beach, they are a privately held company. They do not make their attendance known. We have some ways of making stealth phone calls and finding out, but we think they're actually drawing a little bit less than that. The next biggest attraction in the state would be the Fort Sumter tours in Charleston at about 700,000. So you can see the tremendous success the zoo has enjoyed. And we are the largest zoo in the Southeast, and there's Memphis, Dallas, Jacksonville, North Carolina, Atlanta. I can keep going. We're bigger than the Miami Zoo, Metro Zoo, significantly bigger. So we are a pretty big player in the zoological community throughout the country. Now, I've been bragging on that attendance, but that attendance has come at a real cost to us. We have some challenges. How many of you have seen the traffic backed up on I-126? Jimmy Derrick trying to get to his office and calling me with a lot of profanity because he can't get there. That happens during spring. 30% of those million people come in April, May. It happens during Boo at the Zoo, and it happens during Lights Before Christmas. And I'll explain that a little bit more detail in a minute. We found out, by the way, that at that sustained attendance we had of about 850,000, we didn't know it at the time, but we were right on the cusp of not being able to handle one more person with relation to access and parking. When it went up to 950,000 and 1 million, we realized how inadequate we were to deal with that number of people. And we're gonna try to address that. And then our guest services, if you've been to the zoo lately, or actually since 1986, we had, you'll see that in a minute, had an entrance that was designed to accommodate 650,000 people a year, and we were putting a million people through that. So we're gonna try to really improve on that as well. So here's what we're going to try to do. We're going to try to improve parking and access, improve the guest experience to accommodate the larger crowds. We're going to bring back sea lions in an incredible way. And we hope to improve the critical mass of the botanical garden, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So I said we have 36 million. I need to divide that into two pots. We have a $32 million pot of money made available to us through general obligation bonds of Richland and Lexington County. And then we were fortunate enough when the penny sales tax in Richland County passed a transportation penny a few years ago, they included $4 million to improve, and I never realized or appreciated how literal you have to be. But the when Richland County voters went into the poll and cast their ballot, there were all the line items, and one line item was to improve access to Riverbanks Zoo at the Greystone Boulevard I-126 intersection. So we were very thrilled with that. So that's a $4 million pot, and we're going to talk about that one first. Most people have never looked at the zoo from the air. And I'm going to say this to you. If you had some money to invest in a project, and somebody came to you and said, I'm going to build a tourist attraction on the rivers, on the Saluda River in Columbia, South Carolina, to draw 1 million people a year. I want you to invest in it. And then they showed you that. You would run screaming away from that person. We have the world's best good news, bad news site. It is good by its location. It is good by its natural beauty. It is absolutely horrible from an access standpoint. As you can see, the zoo is a triangle, and two sides of the triangle is the lower Saluda River, and pick your poison. The third side is the SC&G power lines, CSX Railroad, and I-126. So when we talk about the zoo growing, we're talking about, and I'm talking about 50 years from now, unless something changes that I'm not aware of, that's as big as physically as it's going to be. That's it. Now, look at all this great land. We love trees. We don't love them that much. That's the floodway. Cannot be built in. So the zoo has a really horrible problem in getting people into and out of its site, which is even more complicated by the fact that there's only one way in and one way out. I don't know that there's any other attraction in this world that is primarily accessible by automobiles that only has one way in, one way out. And this has hurt us quite a bit. The other thing that I say hurt us, this is part of the reason for the traffic backup. The other thing, and this doesn't show it as well, the next slide probably will, is this interchange on Greystone Boulevard without a traffic light. And you have to know how people visit the zoo. You have to know how long they stay. You have to know when they leave and when they come. And what we have on busy days, roughly between about 10:45 and 2 in the morning and 2 p.m., you have thousands of people starting to leave the zoo and thousands of people trying to come in all at that one intersection, which is why for the last 5 years we have hired off-duty Columbia police officers to direct traffic on the bridge. I also want to point out, while I have this on, we Riverbanks, all these buildings. We have been, I want to say slowly, sometimes with our foot on the gas, been buying these buildings for about the last 5 years. And this is all part of the plan. So if you go forward now, This may not be as, I'm going to walk you through this. You probably can't see it, but here's how we intend to solve this problem. We have since torn down the back of this building, 400 Rivermont. That was about 40,000 square feet. That building's gone. The building right next to it, which was sandwiched in here, was the old Office Furniture USA building. That building is gone. So our plan, which we are actively working on, is to convert all of this to parking, which it currently is, but it's gravel, which is a whole nother story that we got dominoes falling, but I've got a gravel parking lot out here right now that can park about 400 cars. We just on June 30th of this year, 3 months ago, bought the last building, this one, and if the good Lord's willing and the creek don't rise and I can come up with some money, we'll tear that one down as soon as the tenant is out of it at the end of November, which would give us considerable amount of parking. And just sort of parenthetically, and Mark, back up one more slide, I'm sorry to do this to you. Because this site is so restricted, we are trying to get everything out of that site or off that site that is not visitor or animal related. So our warehouse, which sits right here, our main warehouse, our maintenance department, and a few other things are now in this building. So we've been pulling all those things out so that what little pockets of land that we have scattered around that site we'll be able to capture in the future. We're building a new entrance, which we're going to talk about in some more detail. But what I want to point out to you here is what we will do, instead of this one big linear parking lot that the zoo has had for about 38 years, it's going to be 3 parking lots. This will probably be the primary parking lot across the railroad tracks. This will be for buses, handicapped, and employees, and this will be our overflow parking lot. This we are currently converting into a plaza, a green space, as you enter the zoo. What makes this possible is a bridge over the CSX Railroad. Now, we don't have enough time, but I have been talking to CSX for 4 years. That's one reason my hair's long. I hadn't had time to get a haircut. We are asking them, we actually started asking for a crossing under the railroad here and over the railroad here. They have green lighted this. Go forward one, Mark. And that's what that bridge will look like. And now back it up again, I apologize. This one they have said maybe, but you're going to need a lot more than $4 million to do it. So the beauty of this is that, and this was all part of the plan, is that the cars that back up on I-126 now, we would have stored them on Rivermont by bringing them right off the interstate, down Rivermont, and into the lower parking lot. I don't know where we're going to end up with that with respect to time and money. We're working on it, but it's been quite a challenge. So this is what we're shooting for, and we're pretty far along. Now, that was the $4 million. Now let's jump to the $32 million pretty quickly. Oh, there's a big clock right there. Look at that. I wish I'd thought of it. We're breaking this down into 2 categories, 2 general areas. We're building a new entrance. We'll talk about that. Guest services building, gift shop. And on the exhibit side, grizzlies, otters, seal, sea lion, and children's garden. That's how we're going to spend the $32 million. Okay, Mark. This is where that entry plaza will go. We have been working with the folks at SC&G, and all of the challenges that I've talked to you, don't forget what I have not mentioned, but is still a huge part, is these big transmission lines that run down the middle of our parking lot. Just think of them as having a vertical dam drop below them. But SC&G has been very, very good to us and have allowed us to build or encroach further into their right-of-way. So, for example, the new ticket booth, the new gift shop will literally be sitting out where the parking lot used to be. And we're going to build a big green space out here. And Mark, I'm going to ask you to go on forward. And this is what the new entrance will look like. This is with your back to the interstate and looking into the zoo. This is a 4,000 plus square foot gift shop. The current gift shop's a little under 2,000 square feet. This is a building that Riverbanks has needed for a long time, and it's not just ticket windows, but it is a guest services or guest relations building. There will be places for will call. There will be a guest relations reception area where you can go inside and get your questions answered about if you're from Tennessee and need a restaurant recommendation or a hotel recommendation, which we get multiple times a day. We will now have a nice place where you can go and get that done. It has first aid, it has public safety, it has cash control, it even has a lactation room for nursing mothers, which is the #1 request we get from our guests, female guests. This is what the entrance looks like Friday. So if you went to the zoo last summer and walked in, that's where you would have walked in. Those are the old flagpoles, and that traco is sitting where the old gift shop used to be, and that concrete truck is sitting over where the zoo entrance was. So we are moving along. Here's that guest service building. Here is the gift shop, and I don't have any illustrations, I'm sorry, but the grizzlies used to be over here where the polar bears were originally. They are now going back over here, and we're going to build an otter exhibit, North American river otter exhibit, and have a mesh partition separating the two so you can watch the otters and the grizzlies at the same time. And this is the plaza. The brick snake, as we call it, stays in place, and this is the sea lion exhibit. And just to orient you, the Ark, the reptile house, is right there. So this is a complete massive redo of the entry plaza. Sea lion will be a little south of that, as I just showed you. Okay, Mark. I do not have a good artist illustration, but this is a 3D representation. Going back to when I first started yapping away at you about our site being restricted, we did not have enough room to do what you would call a naturalistic or natural habitat sea lion exhibit. So we're going to do a little recreation of Pier 39 in San Francisco. This will have a very urban feel to it. This is sea lion housing, and this is all public viewing from below water, at water level, and then up on top. Now, I'll be very honest with you, we modeled this a little bit after a new exhibit out at Salt Lake City. They did not do Pier 39, they did Cannery Row, but just a few slides in here to show you the sort of the urban feel. Ours is going to be very similar to this. This that you see, we have almost, and this is the beauty of having the same architects they did, zoo designers, the same feel right here you'll have at Riverbanks. And then the last project is across the river on a 4-acre site. The botanical garden, as Riverbanks, when I say Riverbanks draws 1 million people a year, that's both zoo and garden. It's one attraction, one ticket. But only, of that million, only about 120 to 140,000 actually access the garden. And we knew that going in. Botanical gardens, let's be honest, they have, sorry ladies, little old ladies in tennis shoes go to botanical gardens. That's the mental image that a lot of people have. And they avoid it. And it's not. It's a gorgeous place for everybody, all ages. It will be particularly of interest when this project finishes, and we broke ground on this last Tuesday, and they are well underway. In fact, one of the neighbors called and yelled at me a little while ago on the way over here too. So go ahead, Mark. This is the site. This is the brick wall into the formal gardens. There will be a vegetable garden, an education center, dinosaur dig. We're going to have life-size recreated dinosaur bones that children can dig up. The biggest feature will be this stream, which will be like a little stream running into the lower Saluda River. Water will be 3 inches deep. Anybody in here from DHEC? DHEC has declared this a swimming pool. It has 3 inches of water in it, and they literally wanted us to put lifeguard rings and lifeguards, and I'm still fighting that battle, DHEC. It's over 100 feet long, and then it has a little pond that children can come in and see the frogs and the tadpoles and the other things that we all did when we were kids. And then the last component is this big cluster of tree houses. And Mark, if you'll go forward here, I've just got these are from other children's gardens around the country, just to give you some idea of what we're getting ready to build, or what we are now building out there. And the tree houses. So where are we? CSX, giant question mark. However, they have green lighted that bridge, and it is in the process of being designed. So I am cautiously optimistic that we can have that bridge up a year from now. It should not take that long to construct. We have a contract to complete this by July of 15. They are on schedule. Sea Lion by January of 16, and the Children's Garden about a year from now, which is the absolute worst time for us to open it. But I'd rather open it right when kids can go in and play in the water, not when they're getting out because it's cold. So that's where we are, and that's what's going on out at the zoo. And I've got about 5 minutes or so. I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody has about this or anything else. Ann? No. You're very kind. I have a lot more people. You're very kind. I'll give you that $20 later. Dave? Zipline is doing great. We had in July, I don't want to misstate this, 15,000 people rode the zipline in July. We almost paid for the whole shebang in 1 month in July. If you haven't done it, and I've done it a number of times, it is. Has anybody in here done it? What did you like? Did you go to the river? Yeah. You hit about 26 miles an hour coming out of the river. It's a little over 1,000 feet long and 40 feet in the air, and it is an incredible experience. Thanks, Dave. There are 2 words that I will use to answer that. Hillside and granite. That entire piece of property, which is not dead gorgeous, by the way, if you're wondering, from the mean level of the river to the floor of that visitor center is exactly 100 feet up. So that hill rises 100 feet, and it's solid granite under there. If you've ever walked across the bridge and walked along the river or up the hill, you see a lot of trees down. Trees fall there all of the time, and it's because the soil is so shallow and so unstable. And we have talked about it and talked about it and talked about it, and we've even come up with some great concepts for over there, but the granite and the hillside is just an extremely expensive challenge. Mr. Derrick.
We got an event coming up?
We do. I'm surprised you mentioned that. We do. A week from this Friday, we have Zoofari, our annual fundraiser. I would encourage you to come. Tickets are dirt cheap. You come out. It's all you can drink. The food is fabulous, and we have this great live auction at the end. Who's doing that?
I don't know.
This man right here, I went to him. I'm going to beat him to it. I went to him 10 years ago. I said, Jimmy, I need a donation to the zoo. And he said, I don't have any money. I'm not going to give you any money, but I'll do it at auction. And through his efforts, we've raised over $600,000 since then from that auction. So please come. Please come. You'll have a great time, I promise you. There is no question that people can ask me that has a short answer, so bear with me. Day in and day out, regular full-time and regular part-time is about 120 people. We employ another 100 seasonal employees. So the zoo at peak, April and May, will have over 200 people on the payroll. SSA, the folks who do our retail and food, in peak season, April and May, employ 100 people. So we're employing over 300 people during that peak time. Where are we going? This will certainly, the Sea Lion exhibit has the potential to add several full-time employees, as will the Children's Garden. So I see that number going up. Maybe not a lot, but it's going to go up.
Like sure I'm going to be in town.
Oh, you're going to be there.
Isn't it the 26th?
No, it's the No, yeah, right, 26. That's right.
It's not the 19th.
No, it's the 26th. That's right. I'm going to Orlando next week, so I'm kind of messed up. So, thank you, Mr. Derrick. Yes, yes. Anybody else got any questions, and I'll get out of your way?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to tell you how much I love the zoo. I have been here 21 years. I have 3 children.
I remember when you came.
2 of them are married now, so they're
Oh.
at my house. And I can count on one hand how many times that I have not been to the zoo on Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And I go every single Mother's Day, and even my oldest children can't wait for Mother's Day. It has nothing to do with me. Nothing at all.
Do you come to the Mother's Day brunch?
Pardon?
We do a Mother's Day brunch.
I haven't done that.
Yes, you should do it.
I've just gone every year and watched.
Mr. President, how much longer can we go here?
2 more questions.
2 more questions.
Can you talk about how you work with the State Museum or other community and how you do your advertising and promotion to bring tourism into the area?
Whew.
One question.
One question. That's a toughie. The zoo spends about $250,000 a year in advertising. All of that is, almost all of that, that's not true. 65% of that is self-generated money. The rest comes from hospitality and accommodations tax. So we're spending significantly more than the other nonprofits in town. I get asked that question a lot, particularly by elected officials. What are you all doing? And I say back to them, you've got to know the people who visit the zoo do not visit Adventure. They do not, or the State Museum or the Art Museum, and vice versa. So you have to sit down at the end of the day and say, when we've got a limited marketing budget, where's the best place for us to spend it? The best place for us not to spend it would be an ad in Southern Living magazine that says, come to Columbia and visit the zoo, the art museum, Adventure. So here comes my bad pun, and I apologize in advance. We're the 500-pound gorilla. And sometimes we come across as not being as friendly and as cooperative. But I think you'll find our colleagues and those others will tell you we are friendly and cooperative with them and try to drive traffic. But you know, it's like saying to Disney World, what are you doing for the wax museum down the road on I-5? So, I didn't mean that the way that came out. I knew if I kept talking, I'd stick my foot in my mouth sooner or later. Thank y'all very much.